People probably get tired of hearing me say this because I say it all the time, but if you grew up where I did and if you were old enough to chop wood and make hay, you were old enough to make and drink hard cider. Oddly enough, I've been making hard cider since I was about 12 years old, so a little over 30 years now. And so I grew up on the border of Pendleton County, West Virginia and Highland County, Virginia. And the state line kind of went right through the middle of the farms I grew up working on, so to speak, or not far from it. And cider making was traditional there. It had been going on since the early 1800s. I eventually ended up at WVU, where I was studying horticulture in the Davis School of Agriculture. And during that time was really the first time I saw hard cider coming back with any significance into the American market. And I noticed that most of those ciders they just didn't taste anything like what I'd grown up making. And I thought maybe there was a hole in the market that could be filled with something more similar to what I'd grown up making. Hawk Knob, I started the actual business in 2014, and everything that we've done to this point is, the methodologies are very much based on the way I grew up making cider. You know, while I was at WVU, I was able to go overseas actually and studied winemaking in Austria. And so I've kind of taken this old world approach to reviving this Appalachian style of cider making. A business of this nature, I don't think anybody, when they jump into it, realize how much time is going to be involved in the licensing and actually reading law yourself. You know, when I first started this business, it took me the better part of a year to even obtain a license to do this business. I'd say that's a pretty good metaphor for how everything's gone ever since. The legislation constantly changes. That said, a lot of the law that was on the books, a lot of the legislation that was on the books pertaining to all the entire alcohol industry in West Virginia was fairly archaic and outdated. Honestly, it's just post-prohibition legislation that still exists and still remnants of still exist to this day. What people don't realize is cider was the #1 consumed beverage in the United States before Prohibition. Even the kids were drinking cider, mainly due to access to clean municipal water, etc. But more cider consumed per capita than all soda pop combined today. That's a fair amount of cider consumption. But when we lost those orchards with Prohibition, we lost a lot of those varieties. Now Virginia has had a big focus on bringing those cider varieties back, and they've proliferated several of them. I know a lot of folks in West Virginia that are trying to get them going, but we're just not there yet. This industry, you know, it's not about drinking alcohol. It's actually not. It's not about going around and drinking booze. It's about community. It's about going to visit what's happening in this region. What are these people offering? Meeting all these new people, having a discussion about those types of products and what you like and what they like and how you do it differently from where you're from. And then it's on to the next. And there's a broad but connected community around this industry. And so that's appealing to people. And it's a lot of fun meeting folks. People come out here to sit on this patio and overlook a pond where fish are jumping out of the water and have a nice hard cider, but take in this beautiful pastoral setting, etc. I've tried to keep the tradition and the Appalachian cultural heritage as part of the Hawk Knob brand. But I'm not stuck in the past either. I'm trying to bring our cultural roots and the story of Appalachia along with us into the future as we modernize and do new things and innovate. So I'm trying to have a 100% West Virginia grown product. West Virginia was once the 4th largest producer of apples in the country. We're in one of the best apple growing climates in the entire country next to the Northwest. People don't think of it that way, or we seem to have forgotten it, but we have massive potential here. Also, with our elevation and microclimates that we have here in West Virginia, the same varieties that we can grow here will often perform much better than they do, say, over in the Shenandoah Valley. Another thing I would say is if you look at surrounding states around West Virginia, Virginia right off the bat, there's close to 30 cideries in that state. I couldn't even tell you how many microbreweries there are in a very booming distillation industry. I think that in certain areas, people are hesitant to support the alcohol industry because of old misconceptions about it. The fact of the matter is nowadays, if you have a craft beverage business in your area, it's bringing money to that region. It is a local economic driver. People used to think that if you had a region that was going through some sort of economic revitalization, then eventually you would see a craft business show up. There's actually been some pretty extensive studies on this, and it's almost vice versa. I mean, that also does happen, but really if you have an entrepreneur that has the gall to go out and put their money on the line and start a craft business, a craft beverage business in a particular region, what you're going to see is tourism coming to that region and outside dollars coming into that region and staying there. And then most of us in the craft industry are trying to source all of our materials as locally as possible anyway, because we want to for multiple reasons and because the clientele want that as well. And so craft beverage businesses are massive economic drivers, particularly in agriculture and tourism sectors of whatever region they're in.
So this project is really to do an economic assessment of the feasibility of the hard cider industry in West Virginia. We know that the craft industry nationally and internationally, as a matter of fact, is expanding. In fact, between 2015 and 2016, we've seen a 40% increase in people participating in the craft industry. West Virginia is a hotbed for developing the craft industry. Specifically, what's underrepresented is the cider industry. So the genesis of this project really came out of research being done by some of our colleagues in the Plant and Soil Sciences Division. They have been researching heirloom varieties of apples that would be suitable for the hard cider industry. And obviously they formed a natural connection with the existing cideries, Hawk Knob, as well as Schwill Dog. In that conversation, it has been revealed that, there is so much room to expand the cider industry in West Virginia. And so as a natural partnership, we've worked on the research, not just with specific varieties of apples, but how can we expand the industry? How can we encourage more growers, but how do they have the knowledge to be able to grow those apple varieties successfully? And then how do we grow the downstream industries in terms of the cideries and so on?
I'd say the more the merrier, and there's plenty of room. In my mind, business begets business. I wish a cidery would pop up right next door. You know what? Then there's going to be a tour bus coming to see the both of us. Find yourself the proper place to set up shop. Utilize the foot traffic that you can. I think you'll find almost any community that you go to start one of these businesses, people are going to readily accept you and be a big support. I couldn't have ran or kept this business running if it weren't for the local support I have and for the kind of West Virginia pride that people have in other West Virginia businesses. Be willing to get your hands dirty and do things yourselves. And same as pressing apples. First few years, we had such small scale equipment and it was just hands-on, hand labor. And we got this company to 8,000 gallons of production on that equipment. And now we've upgraded and now we have some better equipment. But that's the sort of thing you're gonna have to deal with. West Virginia does have some amazing groups such as the SBDC, the Small Business Development Corporation. They have people that can help you with business planning. I highly recommend doing that. And then just go ahead and tack on another 50% in cost, whatever you thought it was gonna be. Because costs go up, you always overlook something. The business plan is just that, it's a plan. And sometimes things change and you need to make a pivot. One of the good things that was done in West Virginia was the farm winery license, and which allows you to self-distribute. I highly recommend launching your business through self-distribution in the beginning so that you get to know the clientele. You actually learn how to market your product better, and you learn how to sell your product better. And it puts a face on your business. Probably the second most important thing if you're going to get into this business is tell your story. You know, people want to know what that story is, and if you come up with some fancy schmancy marketing campaign to create around your brand, people see through BS. Tell them the real story. Tell them who you are. Tell them what your passion is and why you're doing what you do, and they will appreciate you for it. Inevitably, you're going to find yourself a bucket and fill it full of blood, sweat, and tears. In the end, you have to keep the passion, because there's going to be hard days and there's going to be good days. In the end, if you are just determined to plow forward and accomplish your dream, you will do it. It will happen, one way or another.